the students are able to to learn the pronunciation, because I think that is really important in terms of that sense of belonging, that people know how to pronounce names. It might seem small, but it's massive in the bigger scheme of things. And I think, we've recently just had our cultural day at school, and that is a really big day. Girls from all over the cultures, or from any culture, will wear something that's important to them. We had one of our African girls lead that particular it was like a fashion show and a runway and an interpretation of culture, and she led that whole session with a Xhosa song, and that is just about allowing girls to be themselves in the space of school. And I think we do that well, and I think it's really important that girls are confident to be themselves, and that they don't feel because they've come to another country that they really need to just immerse themselves. And yes, they like to adopt certain things because that's why they come here. They've come for something different. But I think in that it's important still to maintain that real individuality that comes from your home country. So from the girls that have come from Nigeria, we have we are probably on our third nationality of repeat families coming through the school. So we've seen a lot of Nigerian girls come through the school. We've seen a lot of our Nigerian girls come into leadership positions in the school. And I think many of them, when they leave the school, they just say they feel empowered. They feel empowered to be themselves, but they feel empowered as strong women.
Amazing. Great to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing. And, I just love the fact that I love that the school is quite diverse enough, and then you celebrate each. I'm frozen, but can you still hear me?
Yeah. Freeze and then unfreeze.
Great.
It's fine.
Great. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. And that's it, parents. So you can see our Rodin School, supports these children and ensure that they're not disconnected from their cultural values. So good to hear that, Mrs. Whitaker. So at this time, I would like to bring on Dr. Alo. I'm sure she has a lot. I'm sure she has a lot to dish out this evening. So I would like to read a profile quickly, and before handing over to her to, just engage us further and share our experience with us. Dr. Alo Ohio-Omonkhomion is a development economist and an educational consultant with an expertise in British boarding schools. She is the founder of Brains and Butter Educational Consultants, the leading educational organization for high net worth African families interested who want their children educated in United Kingdom. Dr. Alo is driven by the need to improve the educational experience of Africans in the diaspora and their contributions to their countries of origin. She particularly works very closely with African families who invest heavily in an international educational experience for their children. She is an old girl of the prestigious Queen's College, Lagos, where she currently serves as the president of a graduating set, leading a year group of over 500 ladies. Wow. Amongst whom are a number senior level executives in public and private sector. She moved to the United Kingdom in 2000 and earned a BSc in Economics from the University of Hull, a MSc in Economics and Development Economics from the University of Nottingham, and a PhD in Development Studies from the University of Sussex in 2012. Dr. Alo is well known for a love for God, youthful vigor, and passion for education, a Christian faith, family life, communal and commercial expressions all have a vibrant signature of diligence and excellence. Whether it's raising 3 lovely children or leading a network of accomplished women, she brings a vibrant spirit and unwavering support to everything she does. She's happily married to Ohio-Omonkhomion, a texturist with 3 lovely children. Please join me as we welcome this amazing woman, this lovely and an educationist for excellence, Dr. Alo. Over to you, ma.
Wow, 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 wow. Thank you so much, Adetola, Mrs. Aneyo. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone in the room. And thank you to all our parents who have logged on. I must say that the response to this webinar was really something compared to all the other messages I have sent in the past 8 to 10 days. I got an overwhelming response to this particular topic. So definitely this topic really means something to a lot of us. And I know that at some point during this call, we'll have some polls that would be run, and it would really be interesting to hear our answers. So at this point, I'm going to share my screen, except that you want to run the first poll. Tech team, let me know if you want to run the first poll now, or should I go right ahead and share my screen? Anyone? Okay, so I'll go right ahead and share my screen now. And hopefully you can see my screen. I'm going to put it on slideshow. Fantastic. Okay, so this evening it is going to be very interactive. So you might not be able to see the participants list, but you can see a button that says raise hand. Whilst we would want to see questions in the Q&A, we also want to hear your voice. We want to feel your pulse. We want you to really engage on this topic. So please, when the time comes for us to have the contributions, the questions and answers, please do use the raise a hand feature, because we would really love to hear your voice. There's something powerful that resonates even more when voice is used. So we would love to hear from you. So our topic this evening is preserving African values whilst in a British boarding school. So what can you expect from our conversation today? I'm going to introduce myself. We're going to have some interactions. The polls will come in particularly handy for the interactions. And as I have just said, we would like for you to please use the raise a hand feature. If you click on your screen, it will appear at the bottom of your screen, because we want to engage, we want to interact, and I want to learn from you as well. I can see some of my aunties, big sisters, mothers, grandmas on this call. So please, we want to hear from you, because that is how knowledge is also passed on. You may have watched snippets of my Arise TV interview on this same topic. And one of the things I talked about is the power of stories. My paternal grandmother wasn't exactly the most educationally literate person, but my goodness, was she full of a lot of stories. And in those stories, wisdom was really passed. And I remember growing up watching Tales by Moonlight. I miss Tales by Moonlight. There was a lot of knowledge that was passed through mediums like that. So we would really particularly love to hear from the older people in our midst this evening. We're also going to talk about the bilateral experience. And what do I mean by this? The fact that you might be of a certain heritage, Ghanaian, Nigerian, from Benin Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, but you are living in the United Kingdom, or in some shape or form, you are interacting on an international scene, right? That is in and of itself a bilateral experience, and could often be a clash of culture, except you are very well versed in other people's culture, and exposure to an international scene, and what is expected, what the etiquette is like, what are the values on an international scene, and what is the medley of different cultures. What does this look like? My husband has had to work, his previous role as a regional manager, and certain regions had certain things about them. So these things are real. But particularly the values that we're going to really delve deeper into tonight, this evening, will be African values. We're also going to be talking about the school culture, or as my Ghanaian friends would like to say, culture. So we're going to talk about the school culture this evening as well, because we're talking about how do we preserve these values, these African values that we hold dear in a British boarding school. Then we'll talk about something called your family charter. I actually got this from my son, who said to me he wanted to create his own charter. And I thought, oh my goodness, I had to go back and look up the meaning of a charter again. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then we're going to open the room up for contributions, for questions, and for answers from myself and Alison from Rodin School and other associates who are on this call as well, like Mrs. Bernadette Oluwayomi Okunsoya as well. So let's delve right into it. As you can see, there's a lot in store for you this evening. So as I said at the start, the response to this webinar was really something. And that is in and of itself a telltale sign. So what is it telling us? Why do we have so many of you on the call this evening for us to discuss this topic? It's because there is a real concern that we just might be seeing an erosion of our core African values. And for a good number of us, we don't quite want this to happen. We want to preserve our values as much as possible, but we are also very mindful that there is an evolution in society. A tech-driven world has had quite its impact in how society functions, in consumer behavior, in market behavior, in education. So how do we deal with this change in society, changing times, a changing international values landscape, and at the same time preserve those values that we hold dear? One thing we know for sure is that values matter. Even in the business world, you would need to understand what are your values as a business? What are your core values as a person? You hear people talk about your unique selling proposition or your value proposition, because values matter. Essentially, your values are the contributions you make, are the things that shape you. They give you your own unique blueprint. Values essentially make you who you are. And in that sense, values definitely shape your identity. So the values you instill in your children, the values in your home, you will hear people say, oh, I'm a child of so, so, and so, and as a child of so, so, and so, because those values define you. Values shape your identity to a very large extent. So just to recap, values matter, period. Values matter. And there is a concern that there just might be an erosion of our African values in a rapidly evolving tech-driven world. So I thought to introduce myself to you a bit. And as I introduce myself, because if I'm talking about values to a large extent, values are relative, right? Values depend on place, time, culture, even the historic period in which you're living in. So values are relative to a large extent. So in introducing myself to you, you'll understand my own pedigree, my fabric, my way of thinking, and I would love to hear from us as well as to what shaped you. So as Adetola mentioned whilst reading my bio, I attended Queen's College, Lagos, Nigeria. I started in JS1, so year 7, what we know as year 7, and I spent 6 years in Queen's College. But here's the interesting thing. I started boarding at the age of 9. So I started year 7. I was young and one of the youngest in my set, actually. But that didn't deter my parents. They put me straight into boarding school, and they had their reasons for putting me into boarding school. And I am so grateful to God that they put me in boarding school. I was a crybaby, I'll be honest, but boy, did boarding school teach me a whole lot. Boarding school definitely had an impact in my life, on me. Now, what is so interesting is my first son also started boarding at the age of 9. In fact, he's a November baby, so he was 8 in year 4 and he turned 9 in November. So as of September, when he started boarding school in year 4, he was only 8 years old and then turned 9 a few months after. And if you ask him, he will tell you how much he loved those years as a boarder in boarding school. Completely had a profound impact on his life. I currently serve as the president of my Old Girls Association. I'm from the graduating class of 1999. And again, I've got some old girls on this call. Thank you so much, my blue sisters, for being on the call. And I hope I'm doing you all proud and passing on the torch. That's our motto at Queen's College, by the way, pass on the torch. And I went to Oxbury Tutorial College, where I started my A levels. One of the African values I will be talking about is honor and appreciation. So at this point, I actually want to honor the presence of the founder of Oxbury Tutorial College, Dr. Femi Ogunsanya, who is actually on this call. In addition to being the founder of Oxbury Tutorial College, she is a highly respected woman in the world of education in Nigeria. And she has been so supportive of me, my personal brand, and Brains and Butter from day one. And you see that relationship, see what I just did there with honor and appreciation is part of who we are as Africans. And we'll be talking about that shortly, very soon. I'm going to move very quickly now because there's a lot I want to talk about. I came to the United Kingdom in 2000, had my first degree, second degree, PhD. I'm a wife and a mom of 3 children. So let's move quickly on. Why are we specifically looking at the preservation of African values in boarding schools? It's because of what we do at Brains and Butter. We're educational consultants, and our area of expertise is in British boarding schools. Now, we are educational consultants who mainly work with families of African descent, and we're placing them in boarding schools, mostly independent boarding schools, because we also have state boarding schools, but dominantly independent boarding schools here in the United Kingdom. So we're playing in the West African United Kingdom corridor. And that right there is a busy migration corridor. It has been for years, generations upon generations. There has been that relationship, particularly for the reason of education between West African countries, Nigeria being a big player in this regard, and the United Kingdom. So that's the space we play in at Brains and Butter. And by virtue of what we do, we get a lot of questions. And one question that comes up time and time again is, I don't want to send my children abroad and then lose this child. Oh, come and see this famous person, her son, and his daughter. Can you see that one is sagging his jeans down like this? Or his behavior doesn't even have respect anymore. This, that, and the other. We get this all the time. Parents have a real concern about this thing happening, this loss of values system happening when they send their children to British boarding school. So this is why our focus is on the boarding school experience, but by no means is it limited to the boarding school environment, because this conversation applies across the board. So very quickly, let's look at what we understand by values, right? Before we talk about African values, what are values? So the Cambridge Dictionary defines values as the beliefs that people have, your values. And can I say that whilst we're talking about our children, as an adult yourself, do you know what your values are? Have you actually sat down to identify your own values? Because you cannot teach what you don't have. You cannot teach what you have not identified yourself. So values, as defined by the Cambridge Dictionary, are those beliefs that people have, especially about what is right and wrong. And it is these beliefs that control our moral judgment. It controls our behavior. It controls what we discern as right from wrong because it is the collection of our beliefs. It is what shapes us. Now, a caveat that we must understand, particularly as people who pretty much live in an international world that has been made even smaller by technology, is that values are relative. Values are relative. You may in the past have thought, oh, I know African values are the best. If it's not an African, every other person is in the wrong, and we're the only ones that are in the right. Values are relative. They're dependent on context, dependent on time, place, culture, and like I said before, even on the historical time frame you are in, on the historical period you are in. It's even also dependent on the time you were born. So we know of baby boomers, we know of millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta, different generations. And because of the time in which they were born, I mean, some of us were born in a time where it was still quite analog, but then we transitioned into a digital space. Whilst our children have been born, for some of us, depending on your age, into a very digital space. Like they grew up with phones, where some of us saw like the massive phones, and in fact, our grandmothers, our mothers, phone, radio, they would have to carry a radio. The world has changed, and values have changed as a result, particularly with the flow of information. However, before we now begin to distill those African values, we must understand that they are universal values as well. And these are those core beliefs and principles that are shared across different cultures, societies, historic periods, and they're often the basis for ethical and moral judgment. And it is for this reason, to uphold these universal values, that you have bodies like the United Nations actually really doing their best to uphold these universal values. So we do have universal values as well that just govern humanity and societies to a large extent. Okay, so now let's talk about African values. And at this point, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen because I think I've been talking for a bit and I would like for us to engage now. So please, can you tell me at this point if you can use, I believe the chat box is open and you can chat on the chat box. Please tell me some African values that you hold dear or that you know to be really core African values. So it'll be great to hear from us, whilst the tech team will be putting up a question on the Q&A as well. So what are some African values? Please, let's read from you. What are those African values? Those things you grew up. A lot of us on this call at this webinar are of African descent. So please get typing and please tell us what. Okay, thank you. Amazing. So I'm going to allow oh, I like that Rodine has said definitely respect. I like the definitiveness in that respect. That is a big, big African value. So, Bukola, I saw your hands up. I think you've been allowed to talk. Can we allow Bukola to talk so we can hear from a parent? I can see respect. Okay, so that question from the team in the chat room, can we have it in the Q&A so that we don't lose track of it? Okay, so Bukola, are you ready to share some African values that you hold dear?
Oh, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. First of all, I wanted to say I couldn't put the message on the chat. It was still saying my chat was disabled, but perhaps maybe under the Q&A. But no, for me and for my family is our faith and prayer. That's like our number one priority. And of course, that is one of the things we look at when we're looking at schools to make sure that there will be opportunity for that and for my children to be able to pray regularly. Yeah.
Amazing. First of all, thank you very much for that feedback. That the chat room isn't enabled. So that explains why people aren't chatting there. But the great thing is that we're getting to hear our parents' voice, and we have another parent who will be speaking, which is fantastic. So I'm going to allow Mrs. Stella Azike to speak. So Mrs. Stella Azike would love to hear from you, ma'am. And please use the Q&A as well. Thank you, Mrs. Alawade for Adewumi. Thank you for letting us know that the chat room was disabled. So that's why.
Okay.
So we'd love to hear from you, Adewumi. Yes, Mrs. Azike. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Trustworthiness, integrity, care, giving, punctuality, cleanliness, respect, like Bukala mentioned before, self-esteem,
Yes.
teamwork, and endurance. There are so many.
Endurance. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
These are some of the African values that we had when we were growing up.
Yes.
And it's still there.
Yes.
So we just want it to continue because some are already losing out on it.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for just dishing them out. Trustworthiness, integrity, cleanliness, endurance, a reverence for faith, teamwork. Wow. Thank you very much, ma'am. We have someone else whose hand is, yes, Adewumi. We want to hear. Wow. Oh, I love that the hands are going up. Oh, Dr. Gunsaya, amazing. So, Adewumi, let's hear from you, and then we'll go to Dr. Femi Ogunsanya next.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Alo. It's such a great opportunity to be here to learn about this particular interesting topic. So for me, it would be resilience because going to study abroad to me immediately feels like they would have too much to just have, immediately. They wouldn't have to there's no, they wouldn't have that opportunity to, I don't want to say struggle or strive or something, but I want a situation where it won't be all too easy, for them. They should have that opportunity to take ownership of a lot of aspects, not just their academics, but their cleanliness, and once in a while have some time to even make their food, if they're of that age and they can be trusted with fire, that sort of thing. Resilience, the ability to be able to thrive even whatever the circumstances. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Adewumi. That is really profound. That resilience is key. I like how you ended it with the ability to thrive, even in the midst of the odds, as it were. And when you mentioned cleanliness, I actually thought of a situation where a boarder said to us, "Oh, his mom wants him to bath like twice in a day, and sometimes he wakes up and he doesn't really need to bother having his bath. He can just wear his uniform." And mom is like, "What do you mean? Have your bath. You don't have to, because it's cold and all of that. Sometimes they don't want to go into the shower." So cleanliness is a big one for us, perhaps because of the climate we've come from, or for whatever reason we value cleanliness. But I really like the one on resilience as well. Thank you so much, Adeomi. I really appreciate your contribution. So I'm going to go to Dr. Femi Ogunsanya. Thank you so much, ma. It would be such a pleasure to hear from you, ma.
Right, good evening, and thank you very much indeed for this opportunity to share this very, very necessary conversation. Growing up, hard work was one of the things that was instilled in us, and that's very much growing up in Nigeria. Hard work was not compromised. So you got up early in the morning, even if you had maids, you had your own duties allocated to you that you had to do. And I remember my mom, there were only two of us, my brother and I, and she always said, "I can't have one daughter who will be spoiled." And therefore I had to share responsibilities with the maids and everything. And I'm a better person for it. Cleanliness has been mentioned. And again, it used to be very much there. And it's a culture that should be sustained and continued. We had a lot of pride in our environment, in our homes, in our achievements, in all that we could achieve in life. We had a lot of pride, self-pride, self-esteem. We have a lot of that as well. Kindness. We're a very kind community of people, compassionate, and we're very supportive of each other. So those are the things that we need to perpetuate to ensure that we do not lose them amongst as we're evolving. Yes, let me just say as we're evolving, so that we retain these things. Kindness, we're very, very supportive of each other and very kind towards each other. Somebody loses a family or loses somebody, people just come, they bring gifts, they bring water, they bring all kinds of things to be supportive. So those are all values and cultural aspects that we have as Africans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. Greater thanks to you, Ma, for sharing, because those key values that you have mentioned are really core to us as Africans. Hard work, a sense of pride in our achievements, the support for one another within a community. We cry together, we laugh together, we share together. These are really, really core African values. I'm so glad that this is actually being live streamed. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to share this far and wide, because I truly believe in the power of media in reinforcing these values. And we actually will be having sessions where we're going to teach our children these values, because it is so key. Thank you so much for sharing. In case some of us don't realize, Dr. Ogunsoya is well in her 70s, but still so delectable. And you can hear what she has shared. She's running a school, Oxbridge Tutorial College, and you can definitely be sure that the students at Oxbridge are having these values instilled in them. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing. We're so grateful. And we also have my amazing mother, who is going to speak as well, the one from whose loins God ushered me into this world. I'm so glad you're on the call, Mommy. You have the floor, Mommy.
Okay. Good evening, all. Can you hear me? Good evening. Okay. Oh, what an interesting topic. And I want to also see this opportunity to say thank you to Mommy Ogunsoya. She's a wonderful, wonderful, I call her Mom. And that's who she is. Okay. Interesting. Appropriate dressing is one cover. In those days, we were taught church dressing, from social, from outing, sportswear, so those are it needs to come back. That is dressing appropriately. I used to share with someone that when I was growing up, even when I'm alone in my room, I like to still cover to wear whatever. So when I see people out now and then they are like half, well, let me not say, I say, why would somebody expose? Oh, so I think it's one value that I, think we should begin to emphasize, like I know during the course of your discussion, you found that values becomes our character. And oftentimes now you employ people, they have skills, they don't have character. And when you have the ones with character, probably no skills. So it's a big issue. And I love this topic. It's something that we should, put out there every now and then. So like Omegusoya said, dignity in labor. Some of us came from a very, very, we had to do a lot of house chores, do things, and that's actually informed most of what we do, even at, older age. So appropriate dressing, dignity in labor, that communal, value of looking after one another. You don't have to come from the same mom or the same whatever before you become sisters and brothers. In fact, I remember in those days, we find children say, "Are you my uncle? Are you my auntie?" No. But because of the culture of, loving one another, that it says a community that, so I think my highlights is one, appropriate dressing, appreciating dignity in labor, and then, uh, imbibe the right character.
Wow, 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 wow. I'm so blessed and thankful that we're hearing from the older people in our midst. Appropriate dressing is definitely one value that my mom taught me, and I'm so thankful for it. Honestly, like my mom said, you would go out these days and you would see the way people are indecently dressed, and it's like almost like no one can speak to them. And our children are seeing this on the media, and you're wondering, wow. However, we have a duty to teach them, how to dress appropriately, both boys and girls, knowing what outfit is appropriate for when, for what occasion. Dignity in labor, that is key. Dignity in labor is key. And these values truly do define who we are as a people. And I have, let me even share my screen because I'm going to talk about respect in a minute. Respect was one thing that even Alison from Rodin School, who is also on this call, and she moved from South Africa, so she understands the African space, said definitely respect. Respect for our elders. Respect for our elders. The funny thing is, even in the British culture, if you get on the bus, there are designated seats for the elderly, right? And after a certain age, they get a free bus ride, right? They have paid their dues, and so they should be accorded respect. They should be honored, and it is important that our children understand this. To be fair, again, I talked about the bilateral experience. Sometimes they struggle because at home you say to them, or you can't call an older person by their first name, but then their classmate is calling um an older person or an older relative by their first name, and they're wondering, what is this? I have actually made it clear to my own children that if even with a British person, you can ask them, how would you like that I refer to you? I actually had a lady in my church who's significantly older, and I said to her, there's no, it is so difficult for, even if you force me to please call you by your first name, I cannot look at you and call you by my first name. I struggle. Some others will not struggle, but for me, it is a struggle. And you know what she said to me? She said, "Wow, I love this about you." And she was actually grateful for the respect for elders. Honoring our elders is a big, big African value that is embedded, is steeped into our culture. Now, ambition. Ambition. I was in a parents' forum, and the topic of discussion was, my daughter wants to become was it a musician, or she wants to go into dancing, something like that. And I'm really worried. I did not come all the way to this country for my daughter to say she wants to become a dancer and she wants to be putting her videos on YouTube. Now, there are a number of things happening here because the future of work as we know it has changed. Values, as we are talking about, have changed. So there's that happening on the background, but there's also the undertone of, this core drive to succeed, to be ambitious, to, there were certain professions that were regarded as these are core. Oh, an engineer, a medical doctor, a lawyer, an economist, what other one? An architect, a pilot. Like there's some traditional ambitions that African parents really cherish. So when you tell an African parent you want to go into something else that is outside of those traditional professions, the typical African parent struggles. It's like, what are you talking about? I actually remember a lady saying to me, I know your son likes football, but please let him also learn other things. And that is so key. If as your child likes these extracurricular activities. Can I even just say at this point that every child should get involved in STEM in some shape or form, because STEM is the future, really, whether you like it or not. Every business is already a tech business to a very large extent. So STEM is a key part of the future of work. So in addition to those extracurricular activities, a key part of academic enrichment is STEM in the curriculum. But that's the topic for another day. But ambition, that pride in achievement, is a key African value. Dignity in labor, hard work, then gratitude, appreciation. And I would like to bring in that communal support here, in the sense that whenever someone is going through a time of celebration or otherwise, it's always an opportunity to show your love, to sow a seed, almost like you are making an emotional deposit in somebody else's life. And when it's your own turn to celebrate or otherwise, people are there for you as well. So gratitude, being able to express gratitude, appreciating one another, is a big African value. There's no way I can exhaust all the values, and I'm glad we have shared the values that we hold dear. And I'm particularly grateful to our older participants who have shared. We're very, very grateful. I thought to end with this particular value: school. School. I did not put education for a reason, because education is a lifelong experience. We are constantly being educated, our minds are constantly being illuminated. But you see, that institution called school, as Africans, it means a lot to us. I've actually had British people say to me time and time again, wow, you Africans like to go to school. Oh, this person has a master's. This person has a PhD. Oh, school is a big deal for you. And I remember the first time I was told that, I was thinking, really? Like, is this a conversation? Because school is it. Going to school is so important. Acquiring those degrees, those certifications. We value knowledge acquisition within a school. And within my line of work is actually something I experience in when people actually value the prestige of the name of a particular school. This so and so person went to this school, because school is a big deal for us. So they are designer schools, because it's a big deal for the typical African. Schools, going to school, acquiring knowledge, is a big African value. Now, in the opening Arise TV interview you saw, I was invited to speak on this topic on Arise TV News on the 11th of January this year, so a couple of weeks back. And honestly, we could not exhaust the conversation. The producer actually said to us afterwards that, please, can we start going to universities, going to secondary schools to start having this conversation? Because we need to actually bring back the values, as it were. So there's a link to it. I can share that after this call. Now, I remember I have a few more slides and the room is going to open up. Time has gone by so fast. I want to thank you for your attention thus far. A friend of mine once said to me, and I found this really funny, but very insightful. She said she told her children, please, if you're not looking at your screen at this time, just pause and listen to this very funny but insightful quote. She said she told them, outside this house may be the United Kingdom, but you see, inside this house is the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I thought, wow, that is so hilarious. But I got the point she was trying to make. And this point is actually not exclusive to someone like her, who in her own case actually lives in the United Kingdom with her children. So that's a different ball game, right? But the thinking resonates in the sense that in the home, we have our values, we have our family charter. We don't tell lies. We're people of integrity. We dress decently. We're committed to excellence. Hard work is a big thing for us. There's dignity in labor. You need to be trustworthy. Look out for one another. These things are important. Now, like I said, for parents living in the United Kingdom and elsewhere, that saying of inside this house is the Federal Republic of Nigeria and outside is the United Kingdom still holds true, in the sense that it is in your home, right, that you actually define your values and you enforce and entrench those African values that you hold dear. So that as a parent, when you are sending your child to boarding school, you know that the family values, the family legacy have been very well instilled in the child. But I always say to our parents, you're not abandoning your child in boarding school. You are intentional. You are, you're staying in touch with your child. You are engaging with your child. You are close to your child. In some cases, you are a friend to your child, because it's not in every case that you are a friend to them. You are a parent. So sometimes you have to, be that parent. But as they grow older, you need to befriend them some more because they're getting older. But instilling those values right from the home front is where it is really at. Now, let's quickly move on to the school culture as I begin to wrap up my conversation. As many of you would know, my work is as an educational consultant, where I help mainly high net worth families of African descent find independent schools in the United Kingdom for their children. Now, I would tell you this: schools will deliver on academics to a large extent. They will deliver on that. But you see, the school ethos, that is what I especially look out for. And that's why I physically visit schools. Now, what am I looking out for when I visit schools? I like to speak with the head of the school. And so months before I go to a school, my executive assistant will make sure she can at least find a time that is also suitable for me to meet with the head of the school. Because in those 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes up to 30 minutes, actually, we end up having some really lively conversations. I get a whole lot about the school culture, the school ethos. I can see the vision of the leader of the school. I can see, where the foundations of this school, where they're coming from and where they're aspiring to go to. Even the behavior of the head of school, the mannerisms of the head of school tells me a lot, because you know what? That is the highest figure in the school. And the children, to a large extent, do look at this highest figure in the school. So there's a lot, and his culture would seep down to the staff of the school as well. So I look out for the school culture, but not just from the head, from the class teachers, from the security guard, from the receptionist, different parts of the school, the students themselves, the non-academic staff. They tell me a lot about the school culture. And what I'm looking out for is, are these values, this school culture, does it reflect the values that are in tandem with my values? So, for example, I like some key traditional values. I like children to be kept younger for longer. So when I was looking for a school for my children, that was something I was looking out for. I wanted a place where they could be children. They could play outside. Outdoor school, forest school was a big thing for me. So if I had to choose between culture and academics, honestly, I would choose the school culture. But thankfully, you can get a school with fantastic academic reputation and the right school culture. I'm going to very quickly read what I have here. Education has always been a transformative force, shaping minds and creating pathways to innovation and personal growth. I'm going to pause here and say that whilst I understand not many people can afford an independent education for their children, I must say that independent schools, a good number of independent schools, are particularly keen on the personal development of the individual. Because like I said to you, they know that schools would deliver on an education, on the academics, though the delivery and the depth of the curriculum definitely differs, because to deliver a curriculum to the extent that you can take it to is expensive, and state schools don't have that financial capacity to deliver. And that's why a number of parents with children in state schools will augment with extracurricular activities that they're paying extra fees for. But independent schools particularly pay attention to these. Those extra things you're looking for outside of the state school exist within the independent school system, and they particularly pay attention to the personal growth and development of the child himself. So you would actually read their report, very detailed report. They would even talk about the hygiene of the child. They will tell you, oh, the child is very polite. They will tell you so many things about the child's character. And I do appreciate that some state schools are able to do this, but not all the time because they have so many children to look for. I'm by no means saying that everyone must go to an independent school. I'm just buttressing the point that quality education is expensive. And so to deliver on these things, there is a price to pay on it. And independent schools make sure they do their best to deliver on this. Now, I'm back to reading the quote, education must go beyond conventional teaching methods to cultivate values, inspire meaningful learning, and develop students into thoughtful, responsible, and socially conscious individuals. There's meant to be an S there. Now, let's wrap up with how do we preserve these African values? By having this conversation, we are taking a step in the right direction. But it's also what you do after this conversation. It starts with you knowing your own values. Write them out if you have to write them out. Like my son said, create a family charter. Be very clear. And I personally believe in writing. I think writing is so powerful. If you think, oh, it's in my head, oh, I know what I stand for, write it out. And this is one thing a number of schools are doing beautifully well. You go to schools now, you see it on the walls, you see it in different places, the values of the school. Constantly, in the top of mind, in the, shall I say, visual of the children to say, okay, this is what we stand for. So there is something to be said for writing out those values very clearly. And to preserve those values, to preserve our African values, you are the one that would preserve it to a large extent, as much as you possibly can, and instill it in your children. And this is one of those things where, in addition to do as I do, which is key for children, is also do as I say, because we need to explain. Also, why do you call this person auntie, even when this person is not related to you? Why do you call this person big sister? This, that, and the other. They want to understand, because the English man has said to them, it's only someone who's related to your mother or to your father that is your auntie. So, oh, why are you calling this person mommy when she did not give birth to you? We need to explain to them. So we have a responsibility to play. We have to be intentional about preserving the culture by explaining to them. That's why I said, in addition to do as I do, this one also needs a do as I say, because if they're seeing you say auntie this and they're like, well, this is not a relative. So can we have this conversation? Then their village actually matters a lot. Who are the people? And there's a difference between their village and close community, and I'll explain that. So their village, you create their village to a large extent, but you see that close community is their friends in their classrooms, is who they are friends with, who wants to invite them for a sleepover, who their teacher is, who is that significant teacher. Do you know, we noticed in my son that he was beginning to act like his math teacher. And when the thing came to our knowledge, we're like, wow, because he spends a lot of time with his maths teacher because he really likes maths. And we're beginning to see some mannerisms. So the people they are in close contact with, the kind of friends they have, will determine the kind of words that come out of their mouth. I remember one of my sons also saying, what the? And I'm like, where did you get what the from? Of course, it's from their classrooms. So the people they are interacting with, so as much as possible, and they're attracted to certain friends because of the values they have, but at the same time, sometimes they just form friendships meaninglessly. It's just how they formed the friendship. It's just who they gravitated to. So you have to curate things as much as possible, and do your best to ensure that those they are in close contact with have similar values, right, as you, because it can actually do a serious damage. We have a case where a child, because her very good friend has a dog as a pet, she has been on her mom's case that she wants a dog as a pet, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's just not how that family grew up seeing dogs. They saw dogs as security personnel, as it were. But here is their daughter who wants a dog that she can have and look after. It's just who she's hung around with, and everybody has dogs. And it's such a big thing here in the United Kingdom. Okay, now their village constitutes of people like their tutors, or someone who teaches them drama classes, for example, or maybe people they see in their church when you take them to church or to the mosque, or your regular sort of interactions and the people that you are with. That's their village. That's where they're growing up. So they are picking up cues. They are observing. Children learn a lot by observing. So you want to make sure that the village that you are creating for them, I mean, the kind of songs they listen to, the way they are dancing. I see some children dance, and I'm wondering how did this child learn this dance step? And their parents thought that this was cool. For me, it is not cool. So I'm very careful about the spaces and the village that I expose my children to. And in the middle here is the knowledge of culture, which is what I was explaining about actually educating them. That you actually need to explain this culture to them, explain the why, so that the roots of understanding can grow deeper, so that when you're not there, they know the reason and they can anchor even better, because it wasn't just a surface knowledge, but there was a depth of understanding. And that's me done. It's now time to open up the room. We're 5 minutes past 9 here in the United Kingdom, but I know it's past 10 in Nigeria and other West African countries. So we wouldn't want to keep you for any longer, but we'll be especially grateful to hear from as many of us as possible before we call it a wrap today. And at this point, I think I'm going to ask Bernadette to please join me on the Zoom stage, as it were. So over to you, Bernadette.
Good evening, Dr. Ala. Can you see me?
Yes, I
hear
can.
me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Yes. What an insightful, engaging presentation that was. I was particularly moved by just recollecting some of our African values. And you know the bit where you talked about your friend telling her children that the United Kingdom was outside the home and in the home is Nigeria. My mom said that time and time again. Wow. I think it's just an African parent thing. As first generation migrant, it was something you heard constantly, because they grew up in the continent, and having raised children in United Kingdom, they had to find a way to constantly remind us who we are. Yes, you're British, but you're also Nigerian. I heard constantly. So it's so insightful. I'm particularly excited about this. Mummy said your mum went on the court and just blew me away with a quote. Values become character. Oh my gosh. Can we just give a round of applause for that, please? Values become character. And I was like, it is so true. When we're talking about imbibing our values and making sure our children don't lose the values we give them, and we're not thinking as far as shaping their characters. It is shaping their characters, shaping who they are tomorrow, is shaping the kind of adults they'll become, is giving them those stools for life. So it's very important conversations, and I can't wait to take some of the questions and some of the discussions that people will have for us.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. Thank you. So please, if you can use the raise your hand button, we can take one or two contributions. Oh, we've still got Rodine on the call. So Alison, it'll be great to hear from you as well. Parents, our friends, we would love to hear from more of us. So if you want to please raise your hands as well and contribute to the conversation, that would be amazing. So Alison, whilst we're waiting for our parents, are there any contributions you'd like to make, and perhaps tell us a bit more about Rodine, or anything you'd like to contribute to the conversation?
Thanks, Dr. Ala. Yes, that was fantastic and really, really great. And I think, again, very much resonate, even though coming from way south in Africa, we always say to our girls here as well is, you know what African roots are like. And so I think when you do move abroad, it's always that thing where it's always remembering where you come from and what is important to you, and how you utilize that to make the best of the opportunities that exist around. I was actually chatting to one of our Nigerian students, Onose, and she was on one of the previous presentations I did. She was the student who gave her account of life at Rodin, and we were talking about something else, and we were talking about what are the things that are really important to you about Rodin. And one of the girls said it's about the diversity. The other one was about, when I arrived here, I immediately felt at home. It was about a sense of belonging. And Anousa said to me, at Rodin, you'll always find your people. And I think resonating back to what you were saying is that it is those commonalities, it's those values. And it's about finding the people who believe in the same thing as you. And I love that. And it's actually on one of our quotes somewhere around the importance of, or what people find important about Rodin. And I think in choosing a school, I think that is it. And I think there is a school for everybody. And I think it's about knowing what you find important and by being able to find your people in that environment. And I always say to every family, and it's difficult for us because we deal with so many internationals, but it's always about come to the school, come and walk the passages, come and get a sense of what the school is, listen to the chatter, speak to the people. You will find out if that's the right school for you.
Absolutely. I really like that you said she said you can find your people. That is so key in life, being able to find your people who share the same values as you. And the things like having a culture day is actually a really key way that British boarding schools help children from diverse backgrounds preserve their culture, because they feel heard and seen, and their identity and what makes them different can be shared and showcased. So it's really nice when schools allow for that, different meals being cooked. I know Chinese New Year it's amazing how schools celebrate Chinese New Year, or the Lunar Year really widely now, just giving the Asians that sense of, anchor and identity and a sense of belonging, even in a different environment. So thank you very much for sharing that. I know we have a poll, Bernadette, so I'm going to hand over to you. I think they're going to share. So I think tech team, you can quickly share a poll so we can bring this to a close in about 3 minutes. Okay.
So I think I've messed up my camera. Please bear with me. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so the poll question says, what generation do you consider yourself a part of? The lost generation, the dates are between 1883 to 1900. I doubt there's anyone from the lost generation on the score, but if you feel like you're part of that generation, by all means, choose that answer. Greatest generation, which is 1901 to 1927. Silent generation, 1928 to 1945. Baby boomers generation, 1946 to 1964. Generation X, 1965 to 1980. The best generation ever, millennials. Generation Y, 1981 to 1996. Zoomers, Generation Z, Gen Zs, 1997 to 2012. And our Generation Alpha, 2012 to 2024. That ends actually. There's a new generation starting up January 2025, which is I think it's called I can't remember now. What's the new generation called? Someone remind us.
I think it's Gen Beta.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I think they've just gone Alpha Beta. Yeah. Wow. I think we would like to we have 37% who have filled the poll. So please keep filling the poll. We would actually like to know what generation most of our parents on this poll fall into. So please keep filling. 41% now. Thank you. 45%, amazing. Oh, and the millennials are leading, but Generation X is back at it. It's back to the millennials. We're on 54%. Thank you so much. Let's see if we can get that up to at least 70%. So please, if you haven't filled the poll and you can hear my voice, just check your screen. There's a poll on the screen. Please let us know what generation you fall into. Are you a baby boomer, from 1946, born between 1946 to 1964. I find that word baby boomers, that classification, so interesting. We've got Generation X. Thank you. Thank you. Our numbers are going up. We've still got, oh, there's a tie between Generation X and millennials on the call. Okay, amazing. We have 62% who have participated, and we literally have 1 minute to draw this to a close. Thank you. We're on 66% now. We can take that up and then we'll end this poll. The millennials, Generation Y, Gen Y are leading. And I think at this point, we're going to have to end the poll because of our time, because there's no more African time. That is not a value that African time is we're punctual. So we can end the poll now. Thank you very much to the tech team. I don't know if you have another poll or that's the main poll. So we're going to share the results. So if you can see your screen, 50% of us on this call are millennials, 38% to Generation X, and we have some baby boomers, 13%. Wow, we're really grateful to our moms on this call. Amazing. So we'll stop sharing now. Tech team, I think that's all for now, right? So I'm going to hand over back to Adetola. Do you want to close us out?
I'll be happy to do just that. Thank you so much, Dr. Alo. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. It's actually been an amazing time. What an insightful and enriching conversation this has been. Thank you so much, Mrs. Winnekers. Thank you so much for, sharing this time with us and with our family, just for us to look at this important conversation. We've actually explored this topic, and just for our parents to know that we hold these values very dear to us, even while we do those recommendation of schools for you. And just as Dr. Ala said, we will do those extra mile in visiting, go that extra mile in visiting the schools, and then just getting a good feel of their culture, of the school culture, before we even recommend those schools to you. So at the core of it all tonight, I'm sure you've all known that our children can be both global citizens and deeply connected to their heritage. So it is not just about one over the other, but about equipping them to be confident and in embracing the worlds around them. So thank you so much for joining us on the call. It just shows the extent of investment you would like to give to your children, and just being here 1 hour 15 minutes. A huge thank you to all our speakers, Dr. Alo, the Mrs. Winnekers from Rodin School. Thank you so much for joining us. And on that note, I think that would be the end of this conversation. We would like to take the conversation further. If you'd like to know more about the schools that we recommend or how we can be of service to you, please do reach out to us. I trust if my team members, I don't know if they can send our different ways you can reach out to us, but not to worry, we will definitely see a way to reach out to you. You can call us, you can check our Instagram handle, send us a DM. We will definitely pick your call and pick your inquiries. Thank you for your time this evening. And on that note, we say, have a good night and a very good evening. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good evening. Thank you. Have a good
Bye.
night.